Uh, Hello everyone. Today we are here with Professor Shamala Kumar of the University of Peradeniya. And as I promised you last time when we spoke to Professor Sumati Sivamohan, she is going to be explaining what Kuppi Talks group is, what they do, how they form, and all that as well. And Professor Kumar is from Peradeniya, and she herself writes to the Kuppi Talks series. And she herself has written about the democratization process that is needed in our education system. And she has also pointed out to the inherent problems within the universities. When we speak of democratization, I will get to that quietly, but mainly she will speak to us about what Kuppi Talks is, how we can access the articles and where they hope to go, right? I will thank you so much, Professor Kumar, for being here with us. May I please ask you to introduce yourself first?
Okay, I'm Shamala, and I teach at the Department of Agricultural Economics and Business Management. That's part of the Faculty of Agriculture at Peradeniya. I teach business subjects, and it's a bit unusual because my background is in psychology. But the organizational side of psychology. So that's why I'm where I am. Yeah. And yeah, education though has been very important to me.
Yes, it's strange to have somebody from like the agricultural faculty talking about, issues like ethics and humanities and the need for democracy. So I was always fascinated to see how someone from an agricultural faculty was here. So now that you explained that it was also psychology, it makes a little bit more sense, right?
Yeah, the connection just now, it went a bit fuzzy, but does that happen? Okay.
That's okay, because I was talking and you were not speaking, so that's fine. Please continue. Okay. So Professor Kumar, let me start by asking you basically what the Kuppi Talks is, how you were formed, and just give us a general idea of what this is, because Professor Sumati Sivamohan spoke about it last time.
Yeah. So we started out around the time of the lockdown, the very first lockdown. And we were all somewhat, I think we needed a space to speak and make sense of what was going on. And that's how we started. Many of us had worked together in the past on various issues. So this was for us, the people who initially joined that group, it was a continuation of what we had been doing in the past. But it also, it has evolved. And so we have had new members, and when people sometimes have not continued. So the group itself has evolved, what we've been doing has evolved, and our orientation to university, our orientation to what we are engaging in has also evolved.
So is it only campus academics who are part of your group, Professor? Is it generally the academics within a university that from various universities that have formed this group?
No, we have others who are like scholars. They are working on academic issues in Sri Lanka. They might be doing research. So we have a few people who are doing their PhDs and are also members. But by and large, they are all affiliated to the universities. But the way we kind of frame ourselves is we are going to focus a lot on higher education because it's a thing that we are all a common concern. But not only higher education, education in general. And we kind of are a group of people that have three things that you have to agree to be part of us. And one is commitment to democracy in education and educational spaces. And that also means that we are very much committed to free education. And thirdly, this came up later on, we realized that we had to include it, that we do not accept any form of nationalism coming from any group, So that's the other thing. So you have to kind of be okay with those founding principles to be part of our group. So we ask people who have written on the subject, right? So we think, okay, here's someone who might be interested. And then we say, okay, this is what we are going to, this is our thing we all agree on. Would you like to join? That's how we, yeah.
So when you say any group, any ethnic group, right?
Yeah. Anybody, yeah. Like,
yeah. And also maybe probably what you might refer to might be some exclusivist nationalism that any group might think is all right.
Yeah.
So I'll just add the exclusivist nationalism there, just to make sure it's not about, not being faithful or whatever to your country. So is it exclusivist nationalism, or is it just nationalism that you wanted to have?
Well, if somebody, what we would like, I mean, I think all of us come with our own preconceptions, right? And I think if you are going to join, I think you should be willing to interrogate them and question them, and be willing to be critiqued on those positions. So we do kind of try to push boundaries for ourselves as well, because
which is really what higher education is about, I think, Professor, which we forget. Interrogating ourselves, even students, and is that what something that we have forgotten in the higher education field, you think? I mean, you don't have to join a group to know that you need to interrogate your location, that you have to be open to critique. Have we forgotten this, you think, within the campus education system?
I'm wondering about that word. I think there's less space for it, maybe, but I don't know if it's also hard to say, like when you say less space relative to what, right? Exactly, so I don't know if I mean, I can't make those kinds of relativist statements. I think it would be difficult, but I think certainly we should try to expand our spaces for sort of being self-critical and critical of what's going on. And also having the space to talk about it, right? It's not just like in Kuppi as a group, maybe we can talk about it, but how about then talking about it within the university system or within the country? I think we have to create those spaces as well. I was thinking, like, for example, some time ago, there was this is like a random thing, but there was a play at the Vala at Peradeniya. Kaushalya Fernando was acting in it, and there was a kiss, right, in the play, and that descended into chaos because people started hooting and throwing things, and it was really kind of very scary about what this education space is, that you are so offended by a kiss, right? And
I remember following this, Professor, and I think it was made worse by the fact that I think it was a man wearing a dress or something, and it really wasn't the people who were watching, but some outsiders had come. This is what I have heard about it also, that really instigated it.
From what I heard, students were fully engaged in it.
Yes.
It wasn't outsiders who, I mean, there's this idea.
By outsiders, also I meant students who are not invested from the beginning in the play. I don't mean outsiders from campus.
Okay.
Very much the student body, but not the people who are watching.
Yeah. So those kinds of things, we need to have a space to, there shouldn't be this sacredness in our spaces. No, we should be able to be critical of it all.
Yes, Professor, what are the platforms? Now you have given us a clear idea of why you felt the need to come together. Then how do you get your ideas across? What you discuss? I mean, what are the platforms in which you act practically?
Okay, so we have by, like we have this column, as you know, the Kuppi Talk column that you discussed last time. And in addition to what we publish on the island, we have the same thing translated to Sinhala, published in the Anida newspaper. And the Tamil version goes on Ilan Nadu, it's a Jaffna-based newspaper. So we have in all three languages, and I think that's really important. And we're really, I don't know what to say. I'm really happy that we are doing that. In addition to that, we have Zoom-based discussions. Sometimes we have closed discussions. So if there's something that we are really concerned with, we choose a topic. Like, for example, right now we are trying to address this issue of sexual violence in the universities, right? So some of it is closed group, because sometimes people don't want to talk to others. Sometimes not all, even there were some instances where we didn't even invite our whole group, because sexual violence is such a difficult subject to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would have internal discussions, then we would have invited discussions where we want to learn more and develop our thoughts, because it's a struggle. Now, for example, if you take the issue of sexual violence, it was, we ourselves had a really hard time even speaking about it. And it was strange, because many of us consider ourselves feminists, and we consider ourselves, you know, we are women, a bunch of women, and we have been engaged in this kind of issue, but still we had a really hard time discussing it. For instance, how do you grapple with this issue in a way that is both protects those who are, I'm going to use the word victimized, and also you want to protect those who, not protect, I mean, you want to make sure that the people who are accused of these things are given a proper hearing, right? And
very complicated process.
Yeah.
If we move to feminism and, you know, exploitation within campuses, I found your article, Everyday Violence in Universities, very enlightening, because you had, I'll get there in a little while, because I need to first discuss the platforms with you.
So, so we did, so
this is your logo, right?
Yeah.
Kuppi. And I love the fact that Kuppi is, in campus, Kuppi has a different term.
It came from.
Yeah, Kuppi, yeah, after the lecture, students get together. I don't know why it's called Kuppi. Has it got anything to do with Kuppi Lampu, or you think?
I don't know.
I don't know. So the Kuppi thing is where one student who are like the students who understand more try to help those who don't. So it's kind of a peer learning group. I'm fascinated with the logo. So this is carried fortnightly in the island newspaper.
Yeah.
Is it? So okay. So is it immediately translated into?
No, we are a little behind, because we started the translations a little later. Okay. So we are a little behind with the Sinhala and the Tamil. And then also during the lockdown, interestingly enough, especially the Anida newspaper stopped publishing. So then there was a delay because of that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just for my audience to know, you can access the thoughts, and one of you writes one article, right? Among the group. Yeah. So if you want to access the Kuppi group's articles, the island carries it fortnightly. In Sinhala, Anida carries it, and in Tamil, there is a Jaffna-based newspaper that carries it. Right. Yeah. Can I ask you, how do you get feedback on these articles, or is it like a one-way dynamic?
No, we do. And sometimes, like a few times, we've had critical comments, and we discuss those as well. You know, we discuss it and try to understand it.
I see even a Gmail account here, kuppitalk@gmail.com. So that's almost like an invitation for people to say.
And some people also say it's really nice that these discussions are happening. Even our Zoom discussions, you know, they say it's particularly right after this whole lockdown and all, there was complete silence, right? So I think people were appreciative of that space that was created. But I think, as I mentioned, we are trying to push it some more and engage with universities more. That's what I would like to do, rather than be outside the university system.
Right. Professor Kumar, you mentioned that it's a group of women, not necessarily, right? There
No,
are
no, it's a predominantly women. Most of us are women. Yeah.
Right. So, because I know Professor Rambukwale is one of them, and there are other men as well.
Yeah, Dr. Ahilan Kadegama is also part of it. And then Dr. Sudesh Mantilaka at Peradeniya is in it. Yeah.
Right. So yes, that's interesting to know. Okay. So apart from the series of articles, is there anything else that you all have branched into or that you are doing?
Well, we have done various Zoom discussions and webinars. Then we did this statement on Hejaz and Anaf. I don't know, and we got signatures from almost 100 people at a time when it was we actually thought it might just be the 10 of us signing this statement, but there was such a rush of interest in it that was just so amazing for us, because we felt, here is an issue. I mean, it's still not resolved, right? Hejaz is still incarcerated. And there are a lot of people whose stories we don't even know. And because of this kind of draconian laws. So that was something we did that we are very we would like to do more of that, right? And then we also, more recently, we want to have a conference on quality assurance. I mean, I'm sure you're also aware of this whole quality assurance processes that all of us are mired in. And we feel that quality assurance in the universities is made into a very administrative process. But there is a pedagogical issue associated with it, right? I mean, it tells something about teaching, learning, education, right? It's defining teaching, learning, education a certain way.
Professor Sumati Sivamohan said the word that is forgotten is transformation of the personality that we want the students to have, that creative aspect. She said transformation of personality also should be considered part of learning. That you need to become a different person.
She said transformation of personality?
Not really. When you try to simplify what somebody said in a very complex fashion, it sounds so wrong. But she said transformation is also something we have to look into in education, which cannot be quantified, which cannot be statistically measured.
Yeah, I would think transformation as in transformation of relationships and spaces, maybe, because
that word is important.
Yeah. So because one of the critiques I think that we have formulated through our discussions is that this whole quality is focused on the individual student, right? And the individual, and it's a very sort of there's a bit of an objectification of the student in that process. You create this product of a student and you sort of chisel them. And I don't know we are doing the chiseling, but the image is also not, who is deciding on this image of the student that we're trying to chisel them into, right? And it's a very disempowering kind of notion of a student and a teacher, because a teacher is there like not to disrespect the people who typically chisel, but the teacher is there without agency, doing this labor to create something that someone from outside is telling us what to do. You probably have the same experience, right? And then you have, I don't know if you've experienced doing these stakeholder consultations, right? And then these people say, we want adaptable students. And then to me, I'm wondering what are they to adapt to? Don't you want students who say, hold on, this is not okay. We need a different word. And we are going to
No, Professor Kumar, Professor
Right?
Kumar, I can clearly say that's not what they want. That's very clearly not.
Yeah,
So whether questioning would be an employable student or not is a different question altogether. Yes.
Yeah, not that we also are very clear. I mean, employment is very important for students, right?
Yes.
And we need to create. We need to create. I mean, there is something we need from this. We need to transform this world, right?
Yeah.
And education plays an important role in that process. All that is important, right? But it should be a process that is kind to everybody and allows people in the peripheries to speak and to also fashion the world they want, right? It's not something that should come from above, from people in power, you know. That's what I think we.
Right. So striking, just to veer away a little bit from Kuppi group, striking a balance, because they do need employment, they need money to live. So, you know, that is important. But then we should not forget this part of it, where they can also question, become a more, I don't know, questioning and more, what she said, a whole complete person. So this finding the balance as teachers, as you know, we are involved in education. Where do we go? So I loved your image of they should not be without agency. We are not sculptures, you know, it's not a clod of clay. So that it's quite.
Yeah, Madhubhashini, though, I don't think that that these are polar opposites. I feel like they are interconnected, right? Say you working, creating a better world, or whatever you want to say, in which employment is also part of that.
Yeah.
And also critically engaging with the world. They're all part of the same thing. I think what we have to question is, in what kind of world does a person who questions their existence and their connections to their environment, what kind of world is that? And is that the kind of world we want to live in, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the kind of world where employment and you doing what you want and having agency and being critical are polar opposites, right? That's not the world we want, right? That's a very anti-democratic kind of an unhealthy world, right? I think.
Yes. You know, it's words are so poor sometimes when you want to show the complexities of it. Thank you. Yes, we mustn't consider them polar opposites. Professor Kumar, I know of a reading circle that the Kuppi Talks has begun. Would you like to tell a little bit about that, what that is?
Yeah, okay, I forgot. I forgot about the reading circle. Not because it's not important. In fact, I really love it and I participate in it. And it's kind of separate from our group in the sense that we sort of facilitate it and one of us leads it, right? Right now, Erandika from the University of Jaffna is leading it. And I think, you know, Anushka, who has also spoken, she used to do more of it and she has now, Erandika has taken over. But the group itself is kind of every other Thursday at 6:30 and anybody can join. And we have, so right now, I don't even know how to pronounce that word. Sartre, the author. Yeah. So we are reading. We are reading his work, and I think we'll continue to read for another 2 weeks. Then at the end, two sessions, and then after that we choose something else. And we all collectively, whoever is there on the last day, decides what we're going to read next. So we've read Gramsci, we've read the Kannangara, that education policy report. Then like that, we choose what we want to read.
Right. Now, I find it fascinating because it is opening up our, you know, anyone who is interested into reading some seminal texts. which we may have missed, and the pedagogy of the oppressed, things like that.
Yeah, we read that also.
Which are important. So I'm also part of that email group because I'm fascinated about what is chosen. And even if I can't join, I'm quietly reading because I know there's a reason for them to be picked. One of the things I find, well, I wish it was also in Sinhala. It is only in English at the moment, right, Professor?
We were talking about this and wanting to do it, wanting to make it open to Sinhala and Tamil speakers as well. We struggled with it, and we have to really talk about it some more. The readings themselves are Sinhala in English.
Yes.
In the sense we are reading English translations or English text. But it's a good point, and it's something we struggle with. How do we do this so that it's accessible in Sinhala and Tamil in a way that is not too, that we can actually tackle it.
I think the problem there is in the lack of translation, because unless a speaker reads the book, you can't have a book discussion, and if it's not available in the native Sinhala or Tamil languages, it just stops. So we have we just have a huge lacuna in getting good translations across, which is in a very small way. I try to cover that by at least discussing some of these in Sinhala. I still haven't gone to the reading circle books yet because I need to cover the groundwork first. But unless we have a group of translators working, and Professor Sasanka Pereira made a very interesting comment in his Katikawa interview. He said even in Japan, it wasn't government funded. It was groups of people who were translating. It was individuals. Yes. He said, no, we cannot wait till it's done officially, but groups can do it. And then we
there are some. There are some.
Definitely there are some. And then the problem of finding words. I mean, there are some words which Sinhala Tamil may not have a equivalent word. You practically create something, especially with literary theory. So we have these really interesting, not interesting, like pressing needs we need to address. Should we need some of the seminal ideas in the world to come to non-English reading public? So I'm very, very happy about the Kuppi Reading Circle, and as you said, how then to access the non-English speaking people as well. Professor Kumar, before we end the discussion on Kuppi Talk, I want to go back into something that you said, and especially relevant to your article, Everyday Violence in the Universities. Though I won't discuss that article, we need to address some of these issues, while as we do realize what's happening outside the campus, the pedagogical scene, even within campuses. What kind of democracy do we have within? For example, you have said ragging. Ragging is another issue. I won't go into it because there are no easy answers. But also,
can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
I have a bit of an issue. I thought you were talking about my ragging article, but this everyday violence article, I think, was written by my sister.
Was it Ramya?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, it doesn't matter, but
it was Ramya.
Yeah, okay. I wish she was well enough to come. Both of you were
I got a bit. Okay, what is
that's fine. So even ragging or whatever, but the question remains the same. When we talk about democratizing the education and all that, so inside, do we do it? So for example, ragging, let's take your one then. How or what kind of democratization is there if that is still allowed? And for example, even they have a code of dress within all that, right? And then I'm not going to get into any of these details, but just pointing it out before we end. For women, for example, women academics, do they get the same space to express their opinion, or are the higher echelons equally open to them? So there are many issues, none of which I'm going to discuss with you, because this is just to make people aware that when you talk about democratization, there are many issues outside the education system, and there are pretty much a whole lot inside as well. And Kuppi Talks
And
probably would be, is there any, what kind of hope do you have of, autonomous groups like, not autonomous, but, private spaces like Kuppi Talks having a major difference within this kind of restrictive environment?
So I'm going to talk about my personal experience here in answering that question. I see the university as playing sort of, the university is not an insulated space, however much we like to think it is, right? It's connected to our outside space, and groups like us are also sort of connected to the universities,
Yes.
but also the outside.
Yes.
So my experience is when you have these kinds of discussions and you continue them, there are moments where the kind of others kind of connect with you, right? And then that can create a force for change. And those changes, I think we need to be that space, not just us, like groups like us, and even universities, other spaces in the university, have to like open up spaces for that to happen. And I think that's what we are trying. I mean, it's not like, you're there and you're changing everything and you're like Superman. That's not it, right? Or Superwoman. What you want is to be part of a bigger force. And for that force to happen, there has to be space and opportunities to speak and think and to do. And I think we will be part of that, and we have been to some extent, but it's not it's a collective kind of thing, right? So I hope that if we do our conference on quality, perhaps that will allow us to engage with quality assurance a different way, and people will speak out in forums in the universities in a different way, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, I like to be optimistic.
Yeah. That's all we can be, because you see problems and then you take baby steps and you try to see. So that's a message of hope that I loved about this group. You're working within it, and it's all about equity and fairness and justice, as well as about education, and as well as about a space to discuss problems we really face, critique ourselves, and above everything, find a better way. So Professor Kumar, thank you. I wanted it just to be an introduction basically of what you were doing and how we can access you. So you name 3 newspapers in 3 languages. These are articles which will open your eyes about some issues that we need to address within our education system. It's, as I always, it's not that we know the answers, just raising the right questions, and maybe at some point things might get a little bit better. So I also want to, before I end, Ramya was also going to be here. Is she also very much part of this group, Shamala? If you just refer.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's here. And of course, she wrote that article that you mentioned. Every time
she's teaching at
Jaffna University. Her area is public health. So she's in the medical faculty. And her area of work is free health. I mean, that's something she's very passionate about. And there's a big connection between free health and free education. And she kind of brings that into our group also.
Right, because most of you all have always started by saying we need to appreciate how advanced Sri Lanka is in having free health, free education. We are pretty much there. Now we need to improve what we do within it. And that's a very, I wish she was also here. But thank you very much, Professor Kumar, for your time, for telling us what this is about. I hope to also have the discussion in Sinhala with probably someone else, so that people here will know that there are forums in which serious discussions happen about, Sri Lankan education, how, what we need to address, what we need to think about. So I really appreciate your time here. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Madhubhashini, for inviting me, and continue to be involved in our kind of work. Thank
Yes.
you.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Professor. Okay,
Bye.
bye.